Hi all, I'm in the office again instead of an intro in the car. The reason for that is I've been doing some bits and bobs in my office with the carbon, and I brought up the front end that I'd made a little while back, and these and all the bits I've made, mainly because I was planning on cleaning the moulds up a little bit and getting them ready to have another go at making those parts. Well, that was the plan. Let's see what happened. Okay, so I've plumped for that. I'm going to use it as a wet and dry. And all I'm really trying to do, there are a couple of larger blemishes I might try and rub down a little bit, but mainly all I'm trying to do here is just give the extra coat of resin something to key into. Just trying to make sure I go over everything. This bit I'd already done. Like I say, I hadn't done any prep at all, because I didn't really think it was gonna work. I suppose maybe there's a thing there, isn't there? You know, I probably used this expression before. If you don't kick the ball, you can't score a goal. That's a definite thing with this, isn't it? You know, if you don't try something, you don't know if it's going to work or not. Can anyone give me any guesses why there's a hole in the front? I can't remember what I said about that on the previous video. Now, I do have a little bit of a, I don't know if you can see, I know this light isn't the best for this carbon, showing this carbon stuff, but there is a little bit of a kind of a hole there. I'm just going to try and rub that down a bit more so the edges are smooth, if you like. I'm not going to rub it right down. What I'm after is the edges being, rather than it being a sharp edge, I suppose it's being like a chamfered edge. I don't want to do too much on this because obviously the dry bits haven't got much resin on, and I don't want to risk kind of scuffing up the carbon, because I'm pretty sure that will bugger things up. I wrote myself notes in there so as I didn't lose my notes for what I needed to do next time. See, sometimes with the whole ADHD thing, one of the fairly common traits is being a bit rubbish at notes and, you know, kind of doing that, moving on to the next thing and not really noting down what you've just done. And by the time you come back thinking, you think, oh, I remember that, and then by the time you come back to it, you're completely forgotten. Or if you write notes down on a bit of paper, obviously you're never going to find that bit of paper ever again, because you'd have put it in a safe place. So I'm finding now, actually noting on the bit is the best bet. Anyway, I'm going to give that a rinse down, and if you just come with me a second, because that's going to take a while to dry. See out there, it's a beautiful day, and I don't know if it's coming out on the video, but that exo booster is saying, time to go out for a drive, Sean, time to go out for a drive, come on. So I'm off out for a bit. That is all nice and dry now. I've had a nice drive out in the car. So let's paint on some resin. I'm going to sort of slop it on, because, like I said, I'm going to give it 2 layers, so what I don't want is for it to run anywhere, because if it's anything like when you get a run of paint, it makes things 10 times worse to rectify. Driving along, enjoying the sunshine and all that sort of thing, I suddenly remembered I've done a 1 layer one of the hump thing and completely forgotten to take it out of the vacuum bag. You find that sometimes you're doing something entirely different and your brain goes, by the way, did you forget? And you think, yeah, I did. I completely forgot. Anyway, there we go. So, I'm going to give that good wipe down with a, what's the name? Acetone. And what I've got left in the pot will go on there. I'm also going to rub this one down and do the same on the little blemishes on that. So next day with this front end, and it's looking fairly good. You can see brush marks here and there, so that's where I tried a little experiment. I could see some marks in that area when it was sort of semi-tacky, so I thought, let's just see if I can brush those out. Clearly the answer to that is no. And over this side was another experiment. I tried brushing them out with a brush that had, I would say, like a tiny little bit of acetone on, because again I thought, well, that might kind of smooth it out. Again, the answer is no, because the middle area here that I didn't do that to is clearly better than both the others. But there we go. That's the whole point with this, isn't it? Live and learn. So I think, so obviously where I thought this was going to be, I was going to have to make a new one from scratch. This is clearly the way to go. So for this particular one, I'm going to put another layer of fiberglass on the inside, because it is a little bit on the flexible side, just to stiffen it up a little bit. Possibly not everywhere, but in the critical bits I need to tidy this stuff up. And for this surface here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub this down just lightly with a, probably say like an 18 or even a 1200 grit. See where I am with it. If it goes through this and we've got a smooth layer underneath, I might be able to polish it up. If not, it's possible that I might have to brush on again, particularly these bits that I tried to make better and ended up making worse. I've got a medical question for you. Might seem a bit odd for a channel about building a car, but bear with me. Now, when was it? About 95, 96. I had quite a big crash at the Hill Bend at Brands Hatch. I went over the handlebars of my motorbike. I hit the gravel, went over the handlebars of the bike, went in right shoulder first, and like how? And I broke my collarbone. So this collarbone broke, shattered, whatever you want to call it. It broke into about 5 different pieces. Now, when I was sat there feeling rather sorry for myself in the gravel, I felt inside my leathers like that. I felt the end of the bone. It wasn't sticking through the skin, but I felt the end of the bone, and I thought, oh Christ, no wonder that hurts so much. But, so my medical question to you is, had I broken my bone then? Or had I not broken my bone until I went to hospital and they x-rayed it and they told me that I'd broken my bone? So when I was sat there in the gravel and felt the end of that bone, my own basic anatomy told me that lump on shoulder wasn't there before, a pain like I'd never felt before equals broken bone. Right, so just bear with me. Think about that one a minute. So I would suggest you would all agree with me and say, from the minute I hit that gravel, I'd broken my bone. You wouldn't say, no, you haven't broken your bone because a medical person hasn't agreed you've broken your bone. Would you? I'd be stupid. So why is it with autistic people and people with ADHD and things like that, that so many are insisting they don't have those if they self-diagnose? I self-diagnosed a broken shoulder. It turned out I was right. Many years later, when I started finding out more about autism, the penny dropped in my head and I thought, do you know, I think I might have that as well. I read up loads about it. I read up even more about it, and then even more, and I watched lots of YouTube videos and all sorts of stuff, and I then self-diagnosed as autistic. I then went to my GP and said, I think I might be autistic. And they said, fill in this form please, and that form said, yeah, I think you are. My GP did not diagnose me. I then went on a waiting list to see a doctor of psychology, which was about an 18 months wait. I was lucky because that was 3 years ago. Now I think the wait's far longer than that. I was then diagnosed with autism and ADHD, but there are people who are saying now that I didn't have those conditions until the day that I had that piece of paper that said I did. Now I'd suggest to you that's total bullshit. I had it from the day I was born. Okay, we can all agree. I mean, surely that's just simple logic, isn't it? It's a medical thing, broken bone, autism, same thing. So bear with me, we're going to do some graphs. Why is he banging on about this again? Well, I'm banging on this again because mainly from America, but as with all things, it then permeates across here, mainly then being recounted by some of our stupider things like the Express, the Mail, Farage and all those sort of idiots who are saying there's an epidemic in autism and ADHD and people are self-diagnosing and it's just because they're lazy and they want attention and all this kind of bullshit. This is the way I see it. So we've got percentage up this side and we've got time along this side, and you see a logarithmic scale. So we've got caveman all the way to when I was born and then through now. The percentage of autistic people or neurodiverse or whatever is steady all the time. They've always been there. We've always been here. Just because we weren't diagnosed back then didn't mean we didn't have it. So back here in, say, 1800 and something, they didn't know, what didn't they know? I don't think they knew about cancers. It doesn't mean nobody had it. It just means they didn't diagnose it. So then we come along and we come to, I think it's the 1930s when it's first diagnosed, and there's tiny amount. Okay, and there's a few more people in the 80s and 90s. Then in 2000, one thing did happen, is the internet. And there's some TV programs about it. Particularly, I can remember watching a program by Chris Packham, talking about his late diagnosis, and also Gary Newman. He did a very good program. Both of which I watched, and it helped the penny drop, which is why then, about here, I went to my doctor, just like lots of people are, and this will go up. Hopefully, more and more people will be diagnosed. I believe the earlier you're diagnosed, probably the more helpful it is. So those for autism, there's no cure, there's nothing. All I got is a diagnosis, and it's given an NHS leaflet. So you know, literally, like what's a leaflet? 2 sides of A5 to someone who's autistic. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Because someone who's autistic is clearly going to read up every single bit of information they possibly can find about autism, which is far more detailed than a leaflet does. Anyway, so there we are. So that's today's rant. That's today's little lesson about autism. It's not an epidemic. The vast majority of us have absolutely no interest whatsoever in being cured. Like I said to you before, If it wasn't for my autism, I probably wouldn't, and ADHD, I probably wouldn't be doing this. If it wasn't for the autism, it's quite likely I probably wouldn't have spent the ages and ages poring over books and YouTube channels and information about what I need to do and learning about the different types of steel, which welding's best, blah, 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 blah. So there we are. That's the end of the rant. Let's do some work on the car. So this is what I've been up to. I've cut these plates. There's 4mm steel, hole in the middle. So these are going to be for the lap belt mounts. So I don't know whether you would have seen before. So normally race harness type things, you have an eye hook like that. And on the safety belt, it has like a hook kind of thing that secures on the for the lap belt. The shoulder ones are different. All I will do is just have them wrapped around there, securely wrapped around there. So these, the MSUK, who are like the gods of motorsport, have very useful stuff actually, because although this probably won't be raced, it's useful to follow their guidance. And what they say is the angle that from secure point to there should be between 45 and 65 degrees. Now obviously with the seat going backwards and forwards, you've got to be a little bit careful you don't go out of that range. So what I'm doing, I've welded in a couple of new cross members because I needed one for that side, and obviously where the passenger seat's going to be, I've had to weld in there. Then these things will sit, this one's slightly peculiar because I'm going to have the drivers and the passengers on the same one. That will sit in there, weld that in there. First I've got to weld a nut on, so basically the nut that's on there, weld on. You don't have to weld on, it just makes it easier. If you think that's going to be like the floor directly underneath, it'd be a pain in the ass to get a socket or a spanner or anything in there. So I'm going to weld the nut on the back there, then weld them in there. Might seem a bit odd having this all on there for welding, but what I've found is particularly where bolts are fairly big and have a bit of weight, that it's actually quite a good way of just holding everything in place. I've had before, I've just had a nut on there and I've knocked it with the filler and made the whole thing move. Just tapping that, but I can tell power's a little bit low. Swap it around the other side. It doesn't need to be fully welded round. I'm trying to get out of the habit of fully welding everything. It's costing me a fortune in gas, and I'm only doing it because I enjoy welding. Okay, so that's one done. I think I said these sort of videos at the moment are going to be a few things going on in parallel. So I printed another throttle pedal, I don't know, pad would you call it? Whatever the hell you call it, the bit your foot goes on. Made it much more wedge shape in the hope that my foot is then going to be sort of more evenly across it. You may be asking why I'm bothering doing this and not reshaping the kind of shaft bit. You might be able to tell it's already had a bit of reshaping, and it doesn't easily come out of the actual throttle body. It's like, you know, this is for like a fly-by-wire thing. So I can't really apply much heat to that to bend it, because obviously there's a good chance I'm going to melt all of that. So I think this is going to be the easiest way. I think that's a little bit better. You see there? Just use my other foot, get that pedal out of the way. That's a bit better, but you can probably see from the evidence of the dirt on there, my foot's still on the bottom. So I think I'm on the right lines, but I need to actually make it even more wedge shape. And the pedal is very upright and a bit close, but I can move it back a little bit on the mounting point there. Yeah, so I think I'll 3D print one of those, making that. If I put my finger there, I can look at this when I'm in front of the 3D printer and judge how much more. I don't know, how much is that? 20 mil? It's very wedge shape, isn't it? Yeah, so I'll have a little play around. I don't want to get too focused on this though, because obviously this is like pedal positions is more something for the kind of tidying up towards the end. I want to make sure I can get the pedals in a reasonable position and they're adjustable, so I can then adjust them to be spot on, you know, when I can actually drive this car up and down the road. Sat up on here, I'm never going to get it spot on. I just need to make sure it's in the ballpark and not get obsessed. So next morning, and that's it just painted. It's not perfect. It could be rubbed down, I guess, and tried to be smoothed out. These are the bonnet hump things. Seem to come out even better. I'm not sure. I think maybe on curved surfaces, any blemishes don't show up as much. Oh, by the way, that one was the one I did where I just did one layer of carbon. And that's all that is. And I thought I'd vacuum bag it like that to see if it helped the surface more. And then I was going to put a layer or two on the inside, but it's just one layer. It is solid and perfectly good enough for what is needed. I've just got to the end of editing this video and realised I haven't done an end on it, and I wouldn't have said bye, so that would have been a bit rude, wouldn't it? So, bye.